great to have you here, Kim.
Oh, it's very exciting to talk to you today.
So, Kim, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So my degree is in occupational therapy, and I have a deep love for neurobiology. And this is my 36th year in practice of
Amazing.
being a therapist. And the majority of my time has been in the field of mental health
Mhm.
and working with understanding the combination of the brain
Mhm.
as it is affected by early developmental trauma.
Yeah.
I also have in the repertoire of my experience, I'm a neurodevelopmental treatment instructor, which is a specialty in understanding movement
Right.
and how movement develops in children, but also for me, how the body is impacted by trauma.
Yeah.
So I put together a very holistic perspective of looking at the mind, the body, the emotions, the sensory processing
Yes.
of trauma in children and adults.
Yes.
That's my experience.
Yes. You've told us before, Kim, that the area of trauma is a real passion for you. How did that come to be?
Well, accidentally, somewhat. Um, I was invited to do a neurodevelopmental treatment workshop in Eastern Europe in the 90s during the Kosovo War.
Mm.
And, they wanted a specialist in working with children with disabilities. And so I tripped over to this war zone and arrived in an orphanage that had 60 children and one caregiver. And I was there I was supposed to be there for 3 months.
Mhm.
And there was no way that I was teaching anything to anyone because this beautiful human that was taking care of these children, she couldn't do anything other than change diapers and feed. And it was my first profound awareness of neglect.
Mm.
And I think what struck me in that first half hour of being in this orphanage was the silence. Imagine 60 children under the age of 3 and no sound.
No.
And so it was a wake-up call for me.
Yes.
And once you start doing international work, it kind of gets in your blood, I think. And so from one trauma to another trauma, that's been, my life's work. So I also had the opportunity to develop the mental health system
Yes.
for the Inuit people of Canada,
Yes.
which is our Eskimo people. And this group of people has a very high rate of sexual abuse and suicide. And so, somewhere from some unknown space in my cells is a desire to help and to make life different for people.
How do you keep doing what you're doing given how overwhelming this work can be sometimes?
Well, I think it comes from connecting with people like you who have the shared passion, but also, it's having people hold space for you.
Yes.
It's the very same thing that we tell families and clients is when what's shareable is bearable. And I think for me, the work of suffering, human suffering, is a spiritual quest as well.
Right.
So there's a very strong sense of connection to something bigger than myself that allows me a healthy detachment from the work that enables me to step in and continue from that place of passion and compassion.
Yes. So the workshop we're hosting you next year in May in Melbourne is in trauma-informed practice.
Yes.
Why is this important for clinicians working in the mental health field, even broader, not just mental health?
I was going to say, why is it important for the world?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Well, I think for at least 25 years now, I've been saying there's always a reason for the behavior.
Mm.
Whether I'm in the grocery store or the gas station, or no matter where you are, you will meet or see people who engage mysteriously from a place of their trauma.
Yes.
And we are so easy and quick, we as humans are so easy and quick to create a sense of judgment
Mm.
around those experiences that we have with people
Yes.
who are suffering. And so trauma-informed practice gives humans, people, a different lens of understanding behavior,
Mm-hmm.
engagement, suffering, and it invites curiosity instead of judgment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how beneficial then to really connect with someone and understand where they're coming from, so that your judgment is not getting in the way, and then you're missing things, and it may not work out in the end.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the key components to all of that, however, is the only person you can change is yourself.
I love that you say that.
Yeah. So
When Tina and I came to we met you for the first time in Sydney last year with Seed, that's what we came away with. We learnt more about ourselves really than potentially the work we were doing. So sorry, keep going with that
I was
line.
going to say, I often want to call all my workshops that. The only
Yes.
person you can change is yourself, but I don't think anybody would come if it had that title. But you cannot regulate another person if that isn't a part of your skill set.
Yeah.
And so people often come to learn about trauma-informed practice, but inevitably what they learn is compassion for themselves.
Yes.
And that allows you to be your best self with the people that you support.
Yes. So there might be a lot of clinicians out there who have worked in this field for a while, who've worked with people with trauma.
Yes.
What is different about your workshop, Kim?
That's such a great question. So I think what is so powerful about this workshop is the ability to fine-tune your attunement skills to the nonverbals, and to see shades of trauma in the postural system, in the nonverbal cues in the face, in the vocal tones. But I also think that what I bring to this picture is how to enter in to a person's trauma system underneath cognition.
Yes.
So often, especially if you're working with children or even adults, when you have a developmental trauma, it's not always accessible through language or conversation.
Yes.
And coming in at the sensory system level or the movement system level through activity that collaborates with dialogue can be very, very powerful in changing a person's nervous system rapidly and profoundly without them having to highly become activated emotionally.
Yes.
And that's how I feel that this psychosensory work, that's what I call it, is a way of providing support to individuals that is at a level that they may not have yet accessed in their experience.
So you're an OT.
I am.
How is this workshop relevant to other professionals, not just in the OT space?
Well, the reason that's a good question is because the majority of the people that come to my workshops are from every discipline you can imagine.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we have corporate CEOs in our audience.
Yes.
We have, I say we because often I'm accompanied by, I have a team if the workshops get really big. We just had one here in Canada with 350 people.
Amazing.
And I had two support people help me with the intensity of the audience, from corrections to frontline service providers,
Yes.
to people who work in the emergency room as nurses, to school, you know, educators.
Yeah.
The disciplines are vast. I had firefighters in my audience, judges, lawyers. It's amazing.
Yes.
Who shows up.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And that relates to really people learning more about themselves and how they can be with someone else.
And you know, how to prevent triggering clients further unknowingly with the knowledge that you gain, and increasing how to keep yourself safe when you encounter a person that is operating from their trauma lens. It just gives you a deeper well of resources to also support yourself in the work that you do.
Yes. I think of training even in psychology, how it's more around a specific approach. Say for trauma, it could be CBT for trauma, or cognitive processing therapy, or EMDR. But what I found when I first met you last year, Kim, is that it feels like it's the bit before. Understanding someone fully before they may even be ready to go to a particular intervention.
Totally.
Yes.
And I mean, the thing about OT, occupational therapy, is that, you know, inherently we are holistic in the way that we perceive a client. That's part of our training that is unique and different from other professions. And, you know, the specialty that I think often is offered by this way of viewing trauma is that we're looking more at brainstem function.
Yes.
Which, you know, when I think about cognitive approaches, which are critical in supporting clients, this is just another, I call it spoke on the wheel.
Yes.
Right, to supporting the big picture and and you're right, getting some of our clients even ready to participate in a therapeutic process.
Yes. Yes. Can you tell us, Kim, how you weave in the workshop theory with the practical intervention ideas? You know, what's your teaching style like?
That's a funny question, because
I know what it's like, but I'd love you to share it with others.
The reason it's a funny question is it never looks the same twice.
Right.
You know, I think of myself as a facilitator more than a lecturer. And, you know, several years ago, I had the opportunity to present at the International Psychotherapy Conference in London, England. And the comment about the category with which they thought that I fit into was sociodrama, which is an eclectic form of being responsive to large audiences.
Right.
And so, you know, the theory often is shared through story.
Yes.
And then people will generally ask a question, and the question itself becomes the lead into the intervention.
Yes.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
I had a therapist in one of my classes a couple weeks ago who was sharing a story about a client of hers that was engaging in significant self-harm. And as she was telling the story, she was highly dysregulated.
Yes.
Her voice went up. Her eyes started to move all over the place. She was beginning to disconnect and dissociate herself. So I came over to her and I had a piece of Lycra, which is a piece of stretchy material, and with kids we would call it the Superman cape. And I wrapped it around her shoulders. And then I had with me a tool that's called the Safe and Sound Protocol, which is a form of therapeutic listening.
Yes.
And I stuck the headphones on her head. So she had these headphones on with her Superman cape, and the shift in state was almost immediate.
Right.
And her voice went back to a more regulated state. She started to cry.
Did she?
Yep. She connected to the sadness, which she was so busy trying to stay away from.
Yes.
So, here we are trying to unpack the trauma of a client, and there it was right in front of our nose, and we could make that into a practical session right there.
Yes. So she learnt the state that she was in and how to regulate herself, and then she was able then to maybe cognitively look at how she was going to be working with this client.
Totally.
Yes.
And the question that she asked, she could answer herself.
Aha.
Right? The minute that I always say, when the amygdala, that's my thumb, is in high state of activation, the cortex,
Yes.
you flip that off,
Mm-hmm.
right? Once you put that cortex back on, you often can answer your own questions.
Yes. And how lovely is that we often have the answers inside ourselves?
Almost always.
Yes. I love that hand model of the brain by Daniel Siegel.
Yeah, me too.
I use it all the time.
Clients like that, don't they? It makes it easy for them to understand.
They do. What do you hope the participants coming along next year in May, what do you hope that they're going to walk away with?
The ability to do clinical reasoning. That's my big $40 million drive. Is, people often are wanting a toolbox.
Yes.
And the toolbox is in the analysis.
Yes.
So I'm all about strategies, but the strategies are only as good as the people that use them.
Yeah.
So, I have a model. It's called Spokes on the Wheel. It's a bicycle wheel that looks at all the possibilities that might be driving a particular response. Yes. And the faster we become at clinical reasoning, the faster we become at choosing the strategy from our toolboxes.
Yes.
And really emphasizing the therapeutic use of self, relationship.
Right.
As the force for change. So that's what I hope.
Yes.
That people walk away with is some tools, but also some depth of wisdom of, okay, let me try this when I see this.
Yes. It sounds great. What would you love to do on a day off, or what do you do on a day off?
That was the question that is the hardest for me to answer. So don't laugh when I answer it.
Uh-oh, I think I might.
I love to read neurobiology.
Sorry, I'm going to laugh.
Exactly. We're about to head into Christmas holidays, and I was just saying to Bob, my husband, I can't wait to have a day to sit in this office and just read whatever I want.
Yes, about neurobiology.
Yeah, something, because that gives me so much joy.
Yes, I love that.
I mean, I'm not completely narrow. I love to do lots of other things, but I haven't had much time to just think of late of new ideas and create new ideas. So that's my perfect day off.
I love that. Do you have a favorite book at the moment in neurobiology? Yes.
It's called Challenges with Arousal in Neuropsychiatric Disorders.
Oh.
It's this thick.
Oh my goodness. Is it one author or several?
It's several.
Yes.
And, multiple, like editors with multiple contributions. but it's looking at, because arousal theory and understanding arousal in the brain is very critical to me. And one of the things that I've been asked to research this year is sleep. And so talking about arousal, neurochemistry, brain diffusion tensor imaging as it relates to managing regulation.
Yes.
Can't wait to read it all.
Yes. That sounds good, and try and really digest it.
Yes. And then for me, it's all about how does that pertain to what we do.
Yes.
So
I think that's what stood out for me, Kim, last year when we first met, is that sometimes understanding what's going on in the brain, neurobiology, it's complex and it's tricky and it's hard to focus. But what I found with your style is that you made it so easy to understand, even though there was lots of technical terms, it made sense.
Good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, I must have been a neuroscientist in my past life, because it's just something that is natural to me. But please don't ask me to multiply or add.
No.
Because those are not parts of my brain that work.
That's fine.
But when it comes to the brain, it's like breathing. I love it.
Go with your strength too. That sounds good. There's lots of professional development opportunities out there. And at the moment, especially in Australia, there's lots of clinicians, scientists, researchers who are presenting on trauma-informed practice. How do people choose, and why might they want to come along to your one?
You know, I mean, that's, if I'm a consumer, which I am a consumer, I'm very interested in people that have something new to offer.
Yes.
I find the topic trauma-informed practice difficult because it's a real buzz right now. And yet, for me, it's something I've been doing for 35 years. So it feels kind of odd to have it be a new thing.
Yes.
I think that there are so many of us. I think about Bruce Perry and Dan Siegel and all of my colleagues that we're on the speaking circuit together, Bessel van der Kook. We all have things to bring.
Yes.
So it's difficult to be comparative in nature. I always think when I'm listening to anybody who's speaking that if I get one thing out of it, then that's been a successful listening. So
yes.
I often say to people, you have to trust your intuition. Yes. But maybe when people watch this interview, they will feel connected to us.
They might. Well, we hope so.
Yes. And want to come.
That's right. Thank you so much for your time, Kim.